The Death Star, the Planet Destroyer, the Star Killer. Okay, maybe not that last one. But for something that we would all acknowledge as an extremely powerful weapon, I do think we still have to ask how effective it really is. And, it feels like it's kind of a weird question to ask because it feels like just such a given in the Star Wars universe because it's been there since the beginning. It never feels out of place, and we do see it working right away for what it's intended to do when it destroys Alderaan. And I also want to talk about like the Death Star at its best, what it was intended to do. I'm not talking about like the flaws in its protections and the chain reaction that led to its destruction. Even with Rogue One and Galen Erso putting in that chain reaction, it still does take a lot for the Empire to lose. At the end of the day, they lose because Luke is very strong with the Force, and then Han and Chewie come back to save him from Vader. And even with the second Death Star, again, the problem is more so with Palpatine's arrogance that he would give the actual shield generator's location to the rebels. Obviously, the Death Star hasn't been completed. It's operational, of course, but, the rebels don't even need a chain reaction to destroy it this time. They're just able to fly right into the Death Star and destroy it. Again, it's all Palpatine's arrogance there, so it's an entirely different problem. And, oh god, did I just suggest a Rogue 2?
Wait, what'd you just say? Say that again.
But the question of the video today is more so how effective was the Death Star at accomplishing the Empire's goals for it? Because the goal is to establish Imperial rule in the galaxy forever, as all the systems are too scared of the Death Stars that are being built as the Empire continues to build more and more of them, so they never stand up to the Empire, and the Empire just rules forever. And as for building more and more of them, the original plans for the Death Star were created before the Clone Wars, so it took a long time to build that first one, but then you look at it and it's the only way it makes sense with the second Death Star, because it's only 4 years later for them to have another operational one, and it's really the only way that makes sense, unless like Palpatine just has a ton of credit card debt.
Oh, just rebuild it? Oh, that real f***ing original. And who's gonna give me a loan, jackhole? You?
Now, we're shown 3 opinions on the Death Star in A New Hope by 3 different characters, and I kind of want to go over the pros and cons of each one to kind of say, hey, what was good about the Death Star for the Empire, what was bad about it for the Empire and the galaxy as a whole, too, but I think I'm going to start with Tarkin's here.
Fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this battle station.
Now, this is obviously the same opinion as the I find your lack of faith disturbing guy, but I'm going to show him even less respect than Vader did and just credit this all to Tarkin. And I also want to look at this as Tarkin's opinion more, because it probably is the closest we get to Palpatine's in the movies anyway, because Tarkin is obviously the one who's in charge on the Death Star, even over Vader it seems like, and he's probably the closest to the Emperor besides Vader, so the two of them would probably share a similar opinion on why the Death Star is needed, and with just the sheer amount of power you get from the Death Star, it does make sense that they would both want that, because when you can wield that amount of power, it makes it easier to force anyone into submission. Obviously, with the Empire, it's already difficult to speak out against Palpatine, but with the threat of the Death Star, it goes from, oh, if you speak out, you and your family will be killed, to, oh, if you speak out, I am going to end all life on your planet. And it does make sense, given his actions in A New Hope, that this would be Palpatine's end goal, because this is when he dissolves the Imperial Senate, and gives the local governors much more power, as long as they stay in line. But the Senate doesn't have any real power anyway. They haven't since the Clone Wars started, so your biggest problem here is you're trying to fix something that's not broken, and in doing so are opening yourself up to more conflict because you're separating the Empire from the rest of the galaxy. It would be one thing if the Senate had any real power and was using it against him, but they don't. Their existence is purely symbolic, but in that symbolism, it does still serve a purpose for Palpatine, and that's creating the illusion of democracy, that the Empire is what the people actually want. But because that symbolism is no longer there, it becomes a lot easier for people to separate the idea of the Empire and their own planetary systems, or any planetary system, really. So you can see other planets as potential allies rather than as pawns in the Empire's schemes. It creates less of that sense of unity that Palpatine has been taking advantage of for the last 19 years. And because he no longer has that, it means that, sure, everybody could try to stand up to him and quickly be destroyed because the Death Star is just too powerful, but there is still the potential for a lot of chaos here, and it makes it difficult for the Emperor to control the galaxy. Which does bring us to our next opinion of the Death Star, courtesy of Princess Leia, who, in her bravado, still does make a really good point when she's talking to Tarkin about it.
The more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
Leia's point here is that the absolute power that the Empire now wields will lead more systems and more people to join the rebellion, and it's because of that power. It's too much for any one person or group to be trusted with, let alone the Empire.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Bet you weren't expecting to see a quote from Oppenheimer when you clicked on this video. And in the aftermath of Alderaan being destroyed, Leia is proven right, because, Alderaan is known as a peaceful planet. I mean, of course they're enemies of the Empire, but even Tarkin says that it's not a military target. And this is too public of a planet for the Empire to just be able to sweep it under the rug. No, that's not possible here. Any explanation they give, people are going to be able to see through, and of course, to a certain extent, that is the point of it. They want people to fear the Death Star, but the problem with that is, in that fear, it points people to the rebellion, giving them more support. I mean, heck, even after we see Rogue One, we realize that it was fear of the Death Star that solidified the rebellion. And it feels like these should be the only two opinions you can have on the Death Star, but we do actually get a third one from Darth Vader.
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
I feel like this line doesn't get enough credit in establishing just how powerful the Death Star is, because this technological terror that Vader is standing in right now is more powerful than anything he's seen before in the galaxy, and obviously Vader's no new kid on the block. I would argue that he's seen more war than any other living being at this point in the galaxy, yet he still believes the Force is more powerful. And it's not like Vader is saying this because he respects the Force and all life in the galaxy like a Jedi would, who would be saying this same thing. No, I mean, he obviously has no respect for life. If you've read the comics, you know that when he's first introduced, a lot of Imperial officers see him as a recreation of General Grievous and don't really give him any respect, so he goes to the Emperor, and his answer to this is to have a bunch of Imperial officers come together, and with Palpatine at his side, he's just going to kill 5 of them at random. And there is some irony in this comic too, because Palpatine is saying that he doesn't want Vader to do this at first because he doesn't want to rule over a galaxy of the dead, which, if that was true, then why would you use the Death Star? It just kind of shows that, hey, even Palpatine is like, hey, I want to wield this power, but, I don't want to have to wield it. I want to rule over the galaxy, but I want to take advantage of everything the galaxy has to offer. So, in my opinion, the Death Star was never a good idea because it's best used as a bluff or only in the most secretive of situations. As if it's just a whisper, a rumor that sounds so far-fetched. Hey, the Empire has the ability to destroy a planet, but once you actually have to use it, you can't just hide the fact that you destroyed a planet. That's not something you can just sweep under the rug, so when you do use it, you get the fear that you want, but then it's going to have that unintended side effect of bringing people together. You know, Palpatine's biggest problems when he was maintaining the Empire were the conformity and the isolation that he was doing to the Empire. He was separating it from the galaxy, and the Death Star is the ultimate symbol of that, because he wants to have all the power for himself, and because of that, all the systems decided to come together with the rebellion so that they could stand a chance. You know, surely if they fought him by themselves, they would have been destroyed one by one, but at least if they come together seriously, then surely they would have a chance.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Huh. Out of all the clips I could have used, that is certainly one of them. But now I want to shift the question to you guys. Do you think that the Death Star was ever a good idea? Is there any way you could see it being used that could lead to the permanent Imperial rule that Palpatine was seeking? But that's all I got for you guys today, so if you enjoyed, please drop a like, subscribe if you want more like this, and I'll see you next time on STV.